There are many myths around arguably the greatest structure ever built by humans, the Great Wall of China. Some say it's so grand that it's visible from space. Others claim that you can see it from as far as the moon. Other theories suggest that the builders of the wall were left inside. Well, sorry to disappoint you, but all these impressive stories are just myths. But even with those stories busted, the Great Wall of China is an impressive and truly breathtaking structure. So let me tell you its true story. Today, China is one of the most populated countries in the world, counting as many as 1.4 billion residents. It's also one of the oldest nations in the world. It has 3,500 years of continuous written history, but the civilization existed long before that. There is a theory that while the European continent, for example, was most likely reached by humans from Africa, China wasn't populated by settlers that came from somewhere else. Some people believe that the Chinese civilization got formed from local Stone Age people who lived on the territory since the prehistoric period. So now, the Great Wall of China. It's truly big even by today's standard, stretching for over 13,000 miles. To imagine it better, it's almost 5 times the distance between New York and Los Angeles. Or even a bit greater than the distance between the North and South Poles. Even in modern times, people have never built anything close to this big. Of course, it didn't take a day to build the Great Wall of China. 2? Keep going. In fact, the wall was being built for centuries. Maybe you know that ancient cities had walls around them to protect themselves from invaders. Yes, Chinese cities had them too. The first Chinese emperor united the country in 220 BCE and got a brilliant but very ambitious idea to turn all city walls into one big wall that would defend the country's border against attacks from the north. A trusted general directed the construction, enrolling a big group of workers, soldiers, commoners, and convicts. Back then, the wall was built of rammed earth and wood. In some places that were strategically important, the sections of the wall overlapped to provide maximum security. The walls were around 26 feet high on average. But the Great Wall didn't yet look like the construction we know today. Every next emperor would pick up the big wall project, strengthening and extending it, repairing, but also modernizing construction techniques. Some used bricks to build it, others moved on to granite and marble blocks. Watchtowers and platforms weren't there from the beginning as well. They were added by Ming emperors. The watchtowers made it possible to communicate with other parts of the wall through smoke and fire messages. So, the wall is quite inconsistent in terms of material, but it only adds more charm to the construction and shows how much effort and time it took. The reasons why some parts of the wall have been standing for centuries and are still in good condition is glutinous rice flour. Turns out, this sticky rice mortar is almost like cement. It's very strong and waterproof, sealing the bricks so tightly together that even sneaky weeds can't grow between them. You may also notice that some bricks have writings carved on them. They were left by the workers who were building the wall. The purpose of those writings is quality assurance. They contain such information as location, quantity, and responsible officials. So, in the case of some problems with the quality of materials or constructions, it would be known who should be held accountable for it. Recently, a research group has looked through official historical documents of the Ming Dynasty that ruled China from the 14th to the 17th centuries. They came across records of secret doors in the Great Wall, so they decided to find them. They used a flying robot to capture continuous centimeter resolution photos of the wall. They photographed 90% of the wall that was built during the Ming Dynasty and discovered the remains of over 220 secret doors along the wall. Some of them have a specific width and height that allows only one person to go through. Others are large enough to allow 2 horses to pass at the same time. Why are the doors there? Well, the Great Wall's main goal was to protect the country from the enemy. Building doors that could let the enemy in would undermine the whole point of having a wall. So, of course, the doors were secret passages. They perfectly matched the surroundings topographically, and the exit on the outside was camouflaged with bricks so that it was almost completely indistinguishable from the brick wall. The wall was never just a defensive wall, and it was never completely closed. It could be opened on demand. It was also a structure used for trade and commerce, communication between inside and outside the wall, and of course, for defense and spying. Some doors were used for trade with the other side. Through smaller doors, a person would sneak out to spy on the enemy that lived on the other side. The hidden gates were also useful for a sudden attack. As you remember, some gates were camouflaged with brick on the outside. The exit was so indistinguishable that the enemy had no idea exactly where it was located. The inside entrance for Chinese soldiers was hollow, so they could walk through the wall and break the camouflaged exit gate from the inside, starting their surprise attack. Now, even though the main point was to prevent outsiders from getting into the city, the wall wasn't too effective on that matter. It could still be climbed over or marched around. So the wall was being watched at all times, and the guards gave signals to the troops if they saw the enemy approach. Also, the wall provided more time to mobilize and bulk up the country's forces or lure the enemy troops into a difficult strategic position. The construction stopped at the end of the 19th century. The wall lost its strategic and military importance due to technological advances. Over the centuries to today, only 8% of the Great Wall is in good condition, and the rest is damaged. Also, around 1/3 of the wall has disappeared without a trace, due to both natural erosion and human damage. I guess you could say it's now just a pretty good wall. As you remember, the first parts of the wall were built out of rammed earth and wood. These are not the most unfailing materials if we're talking about thousands of years. Also, destructive farming methods have turned large areas into a desert and contributed to erosion. Also, many bricks were taken away from the wall in the last century to be used in building farms and houses. The wall is being deconstructed stone by stone even today, but this time by tourists. Quite a few of them take a stone as a souvenir. That's a total of a lot of stones, considering that over 10 million tourists visit the Great Wall every year. Since 1987, the wall has been a UNESCO World Heritage Site, highlighting that it has an outstanding importance to humanity. The wall is one of China's 56 World Heritage Sites, second place among countries with landmarks protected by UNESCO. Who's first, you ask? Well, the top spot, with 58 World Heritage Sites, belongs to Italy. And do you know that the wall isn't only a famous tourist attraction, but also the location of the Great Wall Marathon? It's a marathon that was established in 1999 and is one of the most challenging ones in the world. You guessed right, people run along the wall, including all the steps. There are 3 distances, so that participants can run a full marathon that is 26 miles, a half marathon that's 13 miles, or just have a fun run of 5 miles. It's nighttime, and you're about to walk inside Pharaoh Tutankhamun's final resting place. You know, King Tut. You don't have a torch, but at least you came with a flashlight. You walk down several flights of stairs and observe how the walls are carved in hieroglyphics and what looks like a spell. Those who take anything from this place will be doomed for life, the spell says. Even if you don't really believe it, this scares you a little bit. You find a huge stone door. Is it a trap? You manage to open it, but oh no, it's only an empty chamber. You check your map. It seems like you're heading in the right direction. After what feels like hours, you realize you must be trapped inside a labyrinth. You try to retrace your steps, but you can't find the door where you came in from anymore. That's it, you think to yourself. You've fallen for the Pharaoh's trap. What's worse, you didn't bring a lunch. Okay, so we've all seen Hollywood movies where the main character is exploring ancient ruins and faces some seriously dangerous traps, right? We've been told Egyptian royalty protected their final resting places with venomous scorpions and snakes, sliding doors that will trap you for life, and giant rolling boulders that will crush anyone on their paths. The thing is, were these traps truly real? Well, I regret to be the one to break it to you, but this is all fiction. These elaborate traps were too technologically advanced for ancient civilizations to pull off. That is not to say, however, that there weren't any traps at all. Ancient civilizations, like the Egyptians and the Mayans, are known for their practice of building entire monuments dedicated to the ones who had passed away. These structures would often reflect the position of person occupied in society. So, for the really important people, the VIPs of their times, massive monuments were built to host their bodies long after they were gone. Some of these civilizations believed that a person's life would continue on the other side of the veil. For that reason, a person would be buried together with the belongings of their current life. If they had a lot of money and power and stuff, that meant their resting places would be filled with riches and gold. Now imagine if you lived in ancient Egypt and you knew exactly where all the pharaohs' tombs were located and had heard rumors of the amount of wealth kept in these places. Maybe you would be tempted to go check it out, right? We're talking about large rooms filled from floor to ceiling with golden artifacts, jewels, and even money. I mean, it does sound tempting. And since there weren't any security guards protecting the entrance of these places, Egyptians needed to get creative as to how they would protect these riches. These old civilizations found some traps to be useful. A recurring one was building empty rooms inside the monument to confuse a burglar. Now let's take a look at Amenhotep III's final resting place as an example. It was built in the city of Luxor, in a spot also known as the Western Valley of the Kings. Two French engineers originally discovered the monument between 1905 and 1914 CE. The structure is huge and has more than 10 chambers, connected by long corridors and steep stairways. The King's Chamber is the most hidden one, and for an outsider to try and find it, they will probably enter a lot of empty rooms beforehand. Other pharaohs tried to protect their riches by commissioning monuments with false doors concealing pits that were up to 20 feet deep. This way, an unwarned and unwanted visitor would be surprised by the deep hole on their way to the king's resting chamber. Alongside false doors, pharaohs made sure to build labyrinth-style corridors and false walls. This way, robbers could take hours or days before they found the king's real chamber. As to pits with poisonous snakes on them, if there were any reptiles inside these monuments, they probably got inside on their own, and would most likely not stay there for long. There is no way snakes would survive years and years without food inside these pits. So yes, another Hollywood-induced belief right there. If these traps seem boring to you, archaeologists did find an interesting deterrent in the final resting place of the Red Queen of Palenque in Mexico. Palenque was one of the most powerful Mayan cities in pre-Columbian Mexico, and the Red Queen was believed to be the grandmother of the last Mayan king, undoubtedly a person of immense importance to the empire. In her honor, a huge monument was built to keep her body after her passing. The discovery of the tomb itself was already thrilling. Archaeologists found an ancient monument when digging at the site back in 1994. The first thing they found was a room with a hidden door. Once they opened the door, they discovered a long corridor. Finally, at the end of this corridor was the Queen's chamber. The team of archaeologists was beyond excited to unearth this chamber with the mummy of the Queen herself still inside it. They found her to be accompanied by her pearls, jade shells, and expensive rocks. But as the team explored the remains, they saw something rather strange. The room was filled with a red-colored powder. Researchers knew that the color red was important to the Mayan people, and that much of their clothing and buildings were decorated with this color. But they didn't understand why the queen was buried with this unknown red substance. After they took a sample back with them for further analysis, they discovered that the red powder was cinnabar, a very dangerous mineral. This powder, when inhaled, can cause, shall we say, severe health damage to a person. The team concluded that this could only be a trap for anyone trying to steal her riches. Okay, so dangerous powders might have worked as the most intense traps we've seen until now. But perhaps the cheapest way to keep out unwanted visitors was to advertise spells written out all over the monument. We'd probably laugh at these today, but back in the day, they were more or less effective. Spells usually said that the person who took anything from that place would meet a tragic fate. Some spells said that robbers would lose their houses in big fires or terrible floods. Other spells said burglars would have incurable and undiagnosed health issues, but they weren't really enough to stop people from taking any gold. There are some stories surrounding how these spells might have been real. One of them is from the famous British Egyptologist Howard Carter, the one responsible for unearthing Pharaoh Tutankhamun's resting place in the 1920s. After months of unsuccessful digging, Carter discovered the tomb's existence by chance. He found the entrance to a stairway right beneath the soil where he had been searching all those months. With the help of a team, he cleared the piles of sand blocking the stairs and discovered a doorway. The door had several royal symbols carved into it, and Carter knew this could only mean a very important person had been buried there. And he was right. With a chisel, he made a hole in the top left-hand corner of the doorway and lit his vision with the help of a candle. He couldn't believe what he was seeing, the reflection of several golden and jeweled items crowding the chamber before him. Lost for 3,000 years, Carter had just discovered the final resting place of King Tut. But the story didn't finish here. This discovery was accompanied by a series of unfortunate events that led people to believe it had something to do with the Pharaoh's spell. Carter himself mysteriously passed away just a few years later, and some of his assistants lost their houses in floods, just like one of the spells threatened. Some say it's just coincidental, as there's no real proof of these things being connected. Well, what do you think? Was this an effective trap after all?
At some point in its long and very interesting history, our dear planet Earth was sort of snoozing, just doing its planetary thing, spinning around the sun. And then, bam, life starts getting fancy. Plants and animals start strutting their stuff, showing off their complexity. Fast forward a bit, about 65 million years ago to be exact, and a cosmic disaster strikes, or at least that's what we presume. An asteroid probably smashed into Earth, wiping out the dinosaurs and other big animals. We can't pinpoint specifics about the asteroid, but we do know that it was extremely large and it crashed into our precious planet, creating a dusty mess that settled everywhere. You can still find remnants of that dust layer in sedimentary rocks today. If you dig beneath it, you'll uncover a whole bunch of fossils. These prehistoric creatures were living it up before the asteroid crashed the party. Think of it as the planet going on a cleaning spree, leaving a bunch of empty spaces waiting to be filled. And guess who took the opportunity? Mammals! These furry little critters were the ones to rise to fame. But why is it that this disaster became such a great opportunity for mammals? It's pretty simple, actually. With no big bullies around, they grew, multiplied, and had a population expanse. All kinds of mammals joined to fill in the blanks. Primates, rodents, basically, the whole furry gang. We're talking about placental mammals, marsupials, and even egg-laying mammals, adding some serious variety to the mix. We like to think of primates as our closest relatives here on Earth. What's their story? Well, around 63 million years ago, just a couple of million years after the dinosaurs' final dance, the primates decided it was time for a family reunion. They split into two groups, the dry-nosed primates, who became the cool monkeys and apes we know today, and the wet-nosed primates, who went off to become lemurs and aye-ayes, hey-hays. The fun didn't stop there. About 58 million years ago, the dry-nosed primates began their own little mission. One special guest called the tarsier, arrived on the scene, featuring big eyes that were perfect for late-night shenanigans. This tarsier took a different path from its primate relatives, embracing its unique niche and evolving separately. To this day, the tarsier is the only primate that feeds exclusively on meat. These little guys have a taste for insects, small birds, rodents, and even lizards. But that's not all that makes them unique. Their eyes are twice the size of their brains. Also, their heads can do a full 180-degree spin, just like an owl. Because of their features, the tarsiers are the true kings and queens of the night. With their superpower of ultrasonic tracking, they can spot their prey instantly. Plus, their legs and feet are like springs ready to launch them into action. They've got this special ankle bone called the tarsus, which gives them those epic leaping skills. Hence the name, if you were wondering. But let's leave these little critters to rest and get back to our story, shall we? About 55 million years ago, the Earth cranked up the heat, literally. This sudden hot pod was a bit too much for many deep ocean dwellers and plants to handle, and they bid their farewells. But hey, every goodbye is an opportunity for something new, right? The oceanic mammals known as cetaceans, saw their chance and took it. They splashed into those empty niches, becoming the rulers of the sea. In this category of creatures, you can find the blue whale and the dolphin. A special primate guest made an appearance around 47 million years ago. Scientists now affectionately call the fossil of such a creature Ida. This little wonder caused quite a stir, initially hailed as the missing link in human evolution. But here's the hilarious part. It turned out Ida was not one of us dry-nosed primates, but a cheeky wet-nosed one. Moving forward to 40 million years ago. This is when another big event happened in the primate world. The New World monkeys, our distant cousins, decided to take a different path and branch off from our lineage of Old World monkeys. They packed their bags and set off to conquer South America, where they're still living it up today. What's the difference between the two, you might ask? Well, one crucial thing that sets them apart is the fact that the Old World monkeys had nostrils that pointed downwards. Around 25 million years ago, another troop of apes entered the scene, and these guys had something special: the lack of a tail. These unique creatures would go on to become our closest relatives. We're talking apes and great apes, the cool gang who share a whole lot of genetic similarities with us. The first ape to break free from the monkey madness was the gibbon. About 18 million years ago is when this little acrobat swung into the picture. A few million years later, the great apes made their grand entrance too. Orangutans were the pioneers, venturing into the wilds of southern Asia. We're getting closer and closer to the present. It was 7 million years ago when the great apes took a major fork in the evolutionary road. One path led to our ancestors, the future Homo sapiens, and the other path led to chimpanzees and bonobos. These two primate branches remained united for a few million years before finally going their separate ways. 5.6 million years ago, a game-changing ape called Ardipithecus made its way into our evolutionary history. It had a special talent, bipedalism. That's right, this was one of the first apes to walk on 2 feet, probably making its primate buddies raise an eyebrow or two. The real showstoppers, however, arrived around 4 million years ago, the Australopithecus crew. These were the earliest members of the Hominina hominina subtribe, our tribe. What made them so special? Well, probably the fact that they brought some serious tools to the game. Stone tools, to be precise. It seems that at some point in their evolution, these clever primates started using stones to make their lives easier. Now here comes a crucial turning point in our story. About 2 million years ago, our ancestors faced a food shortage. Survival of the fittest was the name of the game, and 2 strategies emerged. Group 1 went for stronger jaws, allowing them to chomp on tough foods like nuts. Group 2 had a different idea. They opted for weaker jaws, but bigger brains. They wanted access to a wider range of food options. Obviously, the bigger-brained group took the prize. And here's where our gang comes into play. Around 2.5 million years ago, a type of primate also known as handyman made its mark on history. These clever beings had larger brains and knew how to put those neurons to good use. About 1.9 million years ago, a new star emerged, Homo erectus. These creatures not only walked upright, but also had brains that were almost twice the size of the handyman's. They took the world by surprise, becoming the first of our direct ancestors to venture out of the African continent. They even knew how to tame fire. Approximately 700,000 years ago, the world witnessed a culinary revolution. The earliest evidence of cooking appeared. And around 500,000 years ago, our ancestors decided it was time to become a bit more fashionable, donning the first evidence of clothing. Our very own species came to be just 300,000 years ago. Told you we were late to the party. But the world was never the same after the appearance of Homo sapiens, the anatomically modern humans. Alongside our other relatives, we emerged, ready to conquer the world with our innovative minds and complex societies. The exact path of our evolution remains a bit of a mystery. But what we do know for sure is that Neanderthals joined the party around at some point too. As Homo sapiens flourished, so did our capacity for language. Modern speech is believed to have emerged almost hand in hand with our species. We started expressing ourselves, sharing stories, and shaping the world with our words. So, there you have it. It took 13.8 billion years of cosmic history for humans to make their entrance. Think about it. 99.998% of the time since the Big Bang, we weren't even around. Our species, Homo sapiens, is the toddler of the Earth's family, existing for just the tiniest fraction of the universe's timeline. Yet, in this blink of an eye, we've managed to unravel the entire story that led to our existence. The story won't end with us. It's an ongoing saga, still being written with every passing moment. Whenever you hear about ancient ruins, you almost never picture them being suspended somewhere, or just randomly hanging on the branch of a tree, right? In fact, for most of the ancient artifacts we have exposed in museums all over the world, archaeologists did quite an impressive amount of digging. You see, buildings have this funny way of fading away over time if not properly taken care of. Sometimes we need to reuse some building materials, so an older construction may be sacrificed in the process. Other times, houses are abandoned, and once they are exposed to the elements on the surface, like rain or sunlight, they don't really stand a chance. Some just simply crumble away due to good old erosion. So the only way a piece of architecture can survive the test of time is if it's somehow gotten buried deep down. Now, how did they end up buried in the first place? Well, it's quite the comedy of errors. Ancient cities had a habit of gradually raising their ground level like a kid adding toppings to their ice cream sundae. You see, these settlements were always busy collecting food and building materials to keep up with their ever-growing population. But hey, who has time to deal with waste and rubbish? It wasn't exactly high on their to-do list back in the day. So when it came to building new houses, ancient civilizations found it much easier to save their sweat and tears by piling up the rubble and constructing right on top. But that's not all. Rivers would also occasionally flood and deposit a layer of sediment on the city floors, further encapsulating those ancient constructions. And in those dry regions like the desert, where the wind likes to show off its sand and dust dance moves, you can bet it was a constant struggle to keep the establishments clean. One hilarious example is the Sphinx, which had its head buried in sand until a group of archaeologists unearthed it in 1817. Some ancient towns eventually got covered up because they were completely abandoned. With less human activity to control their expansion, plant seeds couldn't resist the opportunity and sprouted all over the place. They gobbled up carbon dioxide from the air and grew, adding more and more bulk to the ground. Those cheeky roots even decided to stabilize the soil made from decaying plant matter, creating layers upon layers of earthy goodness. It's like the ultimate DIY project Mother Nature embarked on, with plants as her loyal helpers. The act of digging into the secrets of ancient civilizations is not just about unearthing a lost world. It's also an epic quest to reveal the hidden treasures beneath layers of history. But how do archaeologists know where to dig in the first place? If everything is covered in layers upon layers of sediments, debris, and plant roots, they must have some sort of system they rely on before embarking on a new project, right? For starters, they're not always the ones suggesting an archaeological dig in a certain location. Let me explain. Let's say you're a contractor and you want to build a new fancy apartment complex in your city. Some local legislations have certain requirements before your project can start, though. For instance, before anyone starts building on a piece of land, they might need to bring in specialists to check the soil. These clever folks can be archaeologists, geologists, or paleontologists, and they need to keep an eye on things during development. If any artifacts or ecofacts, fancy word for organic remnants, are discovered, these experts swoop in to excavate and study them. But what about sites that have nothing to do with bulldozers and yellow hats? Archaeologists have more than one trick up their sleeves when it comes to locating ancient hotspots. They dive deep into historic records with a healthy dose of detective work. By sniffing out old documents and maps, they can piece together the puzzle of human activity in a specific area. If a site has been visited before, it's even better. Finding records of past excavations or historical accounts can give archaeologists lots of information on where to continue their treasure hunt. Before archaeologists start swinging their shovels, they engage in a bit of a visual scan mission. Armed with a grid system, they'll stroll around the site, keeping their eyes peeled for any artifacts that might be hiding just beneath the Earth's upper layer. From groundstone tools to historic glass and even ancient garbage dumps, yes, they're also valuable. These keen-eyed explorers can spot signs of human activity faster than most people. If they stumble upon midden soil, fancy term for a garbage dump, they know for sure that humans once called this place home. Archaeologists don't just rely on their trusty shovels, though. They have an arsenal of gadgets to aid in their search for hidden wonders. Geophysical tools are like their secret weapons. Take the resistivity meter, for example. This clever contraption measures the electrical component of the soil and any buried features or artifacts. A buried wall, for instance, will create a different resistivity reading than the surrounding soil. Magnetometers and ground-penetrating radar work in similar ways, showcasing potential hints of ancient treasures in the soil. And who could forget our trusty old friend, the GPS? It helps archaeologists map out precise locations, like a high-tech treasure map, leading them straight to their pot of gold. Care to virtually visit some of the most important archaeological sites in the world? Well, follow me. In the United Kingdom, for instance, you'll find this interesting place called Stonehenge. It's one of many henges scattered around, but this one really takes the cake. Picture this: massive ancient stones standing tall and proud, arranged in a funky outer ring and an inner horseshoe, with some smaller stones thrown in for good measure. And guess what? These amazing stones have been around for over 5,000 years. Talk about a serious case of rock-solid longevity. Now, here's where it gets interesting. According to local folklore, the legendary wizard Merlin whipped out his magic wand and poof! He teleported these massive stones all the way from Ireland. Apparently, some giants had assembled them there, but Merlin decided they would look much better at their new location. Others think it's just the ruined remains of an old Roman spiritual edifice. These amazing structures were built by our Bronze Age ancestors. With their simple tools and limited tech, they managed to create this monumental masterpiece. Impressive, right? Unfortunately, there's still so much we don't know about this area. Stonehenge's initial purpose remains a mystery to this day. Sure, there are lots of theories, but scientists have yet to agree on the subject. However, we do know that it's perfectly aligned to catch the sunrise during the summer and winter solstices. The ancient city of Pompeii is an equally amazing archaeological site. Picture this. Mount Vesuvius, a notorious troublemaker, decided to throw a volcanic tantrum and completely covered this ancient Roman city. It turned it into a time capsule, located outside present-day Naples in Italy. Fast forward to the year 1748, when a bunch of adventurous explorers stumbled upon Pompeii. Lo and behold, they discovered a treasure trove of well-preserved goodies: streets, houses, food. Probably a bit stale by then. Blingy jewelry, fancy sculptures, colorful frescoes, everyday household items, and even animal and human remains. It was like an epic archaeological party. From the looks of it, Pompeii had it all. Fancy houses and villas, a massive 20,000-seat arena, cute little artisan shops, hangouts like taverns. And let's not forget the saucy spots like those luxurious bathhouses for some intense pampering. There's also the Sanctuary of Apollo, where people used to gather for their daily dose of worship. And of course, the bustling heart of the city, the Forum of Pompeii, where all the cool people used to hang out. And guess what? Pompeii is so cool that it made it to UNESCO's World Heritage List back in 1997. That's like the ultimate Hall of Fame for historical awesomeness. It also includes many other famous buildings and sites, like the Taj Mahal in India and the Acropolis of Athens in Greece.
A comfortable abode with a gorgeous view of the Mediterranean Sea will serve as a perfect rain shelter. Well, this is what a real estate advertisement might have looked like for Neanderthals 100,000 years ago. Welcome to the weird and wonderful caves you could live in, or not. Of course, back then, neither real estate and advertising had been invented yet. Never mind the fact that Neanderthals couldn't build houses and often lived in caves. Yet, one of those caves looks an awful lot like a residential building. It's situated inside a high limestone cape called the Rock of Gibraltar. If the Neanderthals had had an economy, the caves inside this rock would have cost a bundle. Navigators discovered it in 1907. They just spotted a big hole inside the fortified rock. For many years, scientists have studied this place and found some traces of Neanderthals. They discovered ancient tools in the cave and bones of old animals. But the coolest thing was, they found 4 caves inside the rock. It was like a residential complex. Neanderthals lived alongside neighbors and helped each other hunt and fish. They created feather decorations and painted abstract drawings on the walls. Imagine our ancient predecessors hanging out in these caves 100,000 years ago. And now, scientists hang out there and study the primeval past of Neanderthals in detail. At the end of 2021, archaeologists uncovered a gap inside one of the caves leading to an unknown tunnel. They crawled through this hole and opened a new space under the cave roof. This place has been closed off from the outside world for over 40,000 years. And it seems it was one of the most prestigious apartments in the entire mountain complex. It has high ceilings with ancient stalactites. The ruined stone curtains divided the apartment into several rooms. Scientists also found the remains of ancient animals and scratches on the walls. It seems that Neanderthals had never lived here, but they used to visit this place. Archaeologists found the shell of a sea snail called dog whelk. One of the Neanderthals brought it here for some reason, but the primary owners of this place were hyenas. These caves show that Neanderthals were closer to humans than to monkeys. They had a way of life and even some customs. There's still a lot of work ahead, and scientists hope to find new rooms inside this rock. Meanwhile, in 2003, archaeologists discovered another early dwelling on the Isle of Flores in Indonesia. Among the green jungle, they found a cave with ancient tools. At first, everyone thought the human ancestors lived here, but then scientists discovered an unusual skeleton of an adult. A thorough analysis showed the skeleton belonged to a 30-year-old woman, 3.5 feet tall, just above the waist of an average adult. The woman's weight was equal to the weight of an adult shepherd. The skeleton didn't belong to Neanderthals or Australopithecines. It was a new unknown species, which scientists called Homo floresiensis, or simply the Hobbit. Also, there were remains of unusual ancient animals in the cave. It was an elephant the size of a cow, some large storks, and giant rats. Archaeologists have found out that hobbits were not the owners of this place. The main inhabitants were the rats the size of a cat. Maybe they were fighting the hobbits. Some analysis shows that Homo floresiensis wasn't our direct ancestor. They were in a separate branch of evolution. The hobbit skeleton looks more like that of a monkey than of modern humans. In 2009, in the dense jungle of Vietnam, archaeologists discovered Son Don, the largest cave in the world. If you go inside the cave and shout, you'll hear your echo a long time. In some places, the height of this cave reaches half the height of the Empire State Building, and the total area is larger than one central block of New York. Son Don is one of the 3 caves in the Vietnamese jungle. Many intricate mazes connect these caves. Inside, you can find unique plants and trees that live separately from the outside world. It's a real underground jungle. In some places, you can find collapsed ceilings that let the sunlight in. Besides unusual trees and plants, ancient stalactites hang there. Some limestone deposits are more than 450 million years old. They were here even before dinosaurs appeared. There are also many rivers in the cave. Rainwater coming down from holes in the ceiling has formed them. Fast streams resemble slides in a water park. They lead to unknown underground labyrinths. Scientists have studied only a small part of all these caves. The next unusual cave is in New Zealand. Hundreds of thousands of fireflies live inside. Each of them glows with a blue light. Together, they light up the cave. It may seem to you that you're on another planet, but you can't stay there for a long time. Special air measuring devices are everywhere. Scientists monitor the level of carbon dioxide necessary for the normal existence of fireflies. These insects are sensitive to the environment. If there are many people in the cave, or they stay there too long, the park staff will ask them to leave the place. It's like you're literally stealing oxygen from the fireflies. We've seen some pretty amazing caves so far, but how about a scary one? We're going to the desert of Yemen's Al-Mara province. What we're looking for is not a cave, it's just a black hole in the ground, right in the middle of the desert. It's big, the size of a basketball court. It's not its size that could scare you, but what's inside. Scientists are still not sure what it is. From the depths of this black abyss, a disgusting smell of rotten eggs constantly comes out, and sometimes you can hear some strange, frightening sounds. The blackness of the giant hole in Yemen absorbs all the sun's rays, so you won't see what's there even with a powerful flashlight. People flew over this place by helicopter. They filmed using drones and the most powerful lenses, but they didn't catch anything except darkness. It looks like a big ink spot in the middle of golden sand. The locals are afraid to approach this place. They believe the cave leads to another dimension where evil creatures live. At the moment, the giant hole in Yemen is one of the most poorly studied and mysterious phenomenon of nature. How did it appear? How old is it? Where does it lead? Scientists are trying to find the answers to these questions. There are theories that the hole appeared because of construction work. Geologists drilled the soil nearby in search of minerals. It could have caused fluctuations in the Earth's crust and collapsed the surface. But no one can prove this theory, yet. And now, imagine a place where sunlight has not penetrated for more than 5 million years. There's little oxygen, and it's cold and damp. Still, life is born in this place, not only microbes and bacteria, but also something bigger. The living conditions in this cave are very different from the usual ones, so, in a sense, this cave is like another planet. It's the Moil cave in the southeast of Romania, near the Black Sea. The entrance is a small hole in the ground. Inside, a tunnel leads deep below the surface. The levels of hydrogen sulfide and carbon dioxide are above normal inside the cave. The air here is half as much oxygen as on the surface. People can't be here without an oxygen mask, but other creatures living here can. The cave is home to 48 species of living organisms. 33 of them are unknown. Here you can meet some unusual insects, white snails and white spiders, millipedes with huge whiskers, transparent shrimp, and unique species of leeches. They all live here thanks to the little bacteria autotrophs. They absorb carbon dioxide and release food particles. Bacteria feed on it. Other larger organisms feed on these bacteria, and some bigger organisms eat those little ones. In the end, everyone gets food. In this cave, evolution has created a biological system separate from the rest of the world. Something strange is lurking beneath the sands of Giza, and scientists have no idea what it is. Archaeologists just found a hidden structure near the Great Pyramid using advanced ground scanning technology. What's inside? Nobody knows, but excavations are already underway. The Great Pyramid of Giza is one of the most famous monuments on Earth, but it doesn't stand alone. It's surrounded by an ancient necropolis, a massive royal graveyard filled with tombs and monuments. They belong to pharaohs, nobles, and other high-ranking officials. Most of these tombs are above the ground. They're called mastabas, rectangular, flat-roofed tombs built from limestone or mud brick, and they've been studied for decades. But from old movies, we know that these weren't simple graves. They have deep vertical shafts leading to underground burial chambers, where the past was sealed away for eternity. And recently, archaeologists found one curious empty space in the cemetery, a completely unexplored patch of ground. No mastabas, no visible ruins, nada. For years they ignored it, but between 2021 and 2023, they decided to investigate. They didn't dig though. Instead, they used a technology that kind of acts like X-rays for the ground. These radars let scientists see the secrets hidden there. And there was something hidden beneath the sand, something deliberately buried and forgotten. A two-part underground structure. One part was shallow and L-shaped. It's about 33 feet long and buried just 6.5 feet deep. But below that, a deeper, more mysterious anomaly. A structure completely different from anything else in the area. They called it a highly resistive anomaly, which means it's dense and solid, likely made of stone, sand, or even metal. And still, no one has a clue what's inside it. Now, it's clear that humans made the L shape. It wasn't formed by nature. And the shallower structure might have been an entrance to whatever is hidden below. But they only have some theories about what might be hidden there. It's also filled with sand and gravel. It was probably deliberately backfilled after its construction, perhaps to preserve this. Why? Well, we don't know yet. The archaeological team will need to excavate to understand what exactly this thing was and why it was built. The first guess is a lost burial chamber. Many tombs in Giza have underground burial sites, but most have clear surface markers. This one, for some reason, has nothing. But it could be one of them. The second guess is an ancient offering chapel. Egyptologists know that some chapels were built in this shape, but usually they were above ground, not buried like this. And finally, it might be something we've never seen before. If this turns out to be a new type of structure, it could rewrite what we know about the burials of pharaohs. The only way to know for sure is to dig it up, and that's exactly what's happening right now. Excavations are already underway. Archaeologists are racing against time to uncover the truth. But there's a real danger there too. Giza's fragile ancient structures need to be handled carefully. Otherwise, they could be damaged beyond repair. So all we can do is wait for the truth. Now, these tombs always held fascinating mysteries. Unfortunately, we'll never learn tons of these mysteries because of some relentless tomb robbers. Egyptian tombs were built to guard the bodies for eternity. But that absolutely didn't stop people from breaking in and stealing everything valuable inside. They've been bothering these ancient sites for thousands of years, starting way back in Pharaoh's times. Many of the most famous tombs, including those in Giza, Saqqara, and the Valley of the Kings, were looted. It was a common practice in ancient Egypt. And they were serious about this whole thing. They dug secret tunnels to bypass traps and walls, bribed or threatened tomb workers to get inside knowledge, cracked open sarcophagi to grab gold, jewelry, and artifacts. And by the time modern archaeologists got to most of these tombs, they had already been picked clean. The reigning pharaohs got tired of this infuriating nonsense. The Valley of the Kings, the famous burial ground of Egyptian royalty, was supposed to be the ultimate safe zone. Tombs were built deep underground, hidden in the desert. Passages were sealed with giant stone blocks. False doors and traps were added to confuse thieves. Even curses were written on the walls, warnings of horrible endings for anyone who dared to disturb the tomb, which is exactly where we got all those horror stories about mummies from. Spoiler alert, none of it worked. Most tombs in the Valley of the Kings were fully robbed within 100 years of being sealed. Even King Tutankhamun's tomb, one of the most famous in history, was broken into twice in ancient times. Some of them decided to try and fight back. The New Kingdom rulers built hidden unmarked tombs in a way that should have prevented the looters from finding them, but didn't work. Some pharaohs, like Ramses II, were moved in secret to prevent their bodies from being stolen. Nope, didn't matter. The grave robbers always won. That's because tomb raiders weren't just random thieves. They were skilled, organized, and well-connected. They knew exactly where to look. Many were the ones who had built these sites in the first place, and they knew where the entrances were. If they couldn't smash through the doors, they'd dig through the walls, floors, and even ceilings to break inside. They also worked fast, often within a few years after the tombs were sealed, before anyone forgot where the valuable stuff was. The Khufu's pyramid, the one that's next to this newly discovered structure, was looted long before modern times. The one thing left inside when explorers got there? An empty granite box where the sarcophagus used to be. Unfortunately, it's not just about gold. History itself gets stolen during these raids. Ancient Egyptians wrote detailed records of what exactly and where they buried. So when archaeologists compare these lists to what's found, they can see what's missing, which is often everything valuable. Most artifacts don't end up in museums. They just disappear into private collections, where they can never be studied again. Which is, of course, completely unfair. In fact, a few countries have had enough and started passing laws to take historical artifacts back from private collectors. In Italy, if you own an ancient Roman artifact, you must prove you got it legally. China is actively hunting down stolen artifacts, and they must find ways to retrieve it back from the Western collectors. In Egypt, they passed new laws making it illegal for private citizens to own any ancient Egyptian artifacts at all. Other countries, like the US, the UK, Germany, or Switzerland, are completely fine with rich guys owning their history. The British Museum is built on looted things. European empires invaded half the planet and took whatever they wanted back home. Their museums are often full of such stolen artifacts, and unfortunately, they refuse to give most of them back. For example, the Rosetta Stone. It was taken from Egypt by Napoleon's army, then stolen again by the British after they beat the French. Egypt has been demanding to return for years, but they still can't get it back. Or the Parthenon marbles. These magnificent massive Greek structures were taken from the Parthenon in Athens by a British lord in the 19th century. Greece has been begging for them back ever since, but the UK doesn't feel like it. Not to mention tons of Mesoamerican artifacts, scattered in various museums across the world. European explorers raided Mayan and Aztec temples, took statues, jewelry, and sacred objects, and now Mexico is fighting to get them back. Well, wouldn't it be surprising even if this mysterious underground chamber has somehow been looted already? But if it's a newly found place, could it be one of the few that escaped the hands of grave robbers? Could there still be ancient artifacts, untouched for 4,500 years? We can only hope that those guys didn't get there first. So looky here, scientists discovered ancient artifacts near King Tut's tomb. Turns out, his VIP final resting place looks more like a public graveyard with about a dozen wooden coffins that's been there for around 3,600 years. Okay, I might have exaggerated a tad. The 11 tombs weren't exactly right next to King Tut, but they were close, near the same city of Luxor. New findings in Egyptian tombs can help us piece together what life was like in ancient Egypt. And guess what? Ancient Egyptians seem to have been remarkably like us, modern humans. Say, the women have always loved jewelry, and archaeologists retrieved a beautifully made necklace with 30 amethyst beads and 2 agate beads, plus a hippo head amulet. Bet it was all the rage back then. Researchers also discovered 2 copper mirrors. One had a handle shaped like a lotus, and the other was decorated with Hathor, the ancient Egyptian deity of the sky, women, fertility, and love. These recent excavations near Tutankhamun's burial site led to another jaw-dropping revelation. For the first time in thousands of years, fragments of Queen Hatshepsut's Valley Temple were uncovered. This fearless woman was thought to be the second female pharaoh, who ruled with both courage and wisdom, leaving a legacy as solid as the stones themselves. Her temple, hidden for ages, opens a window into a time filled with power, intrigue, and spiritual devotion. Archaeologists found over 1,000 beautifully decorated stone blocks on the outskirts of Hatshepsut's funerary temple. There were very few women who managed to take the throne in ancient Egypt. Another tomb was found nearby, and it belonged to the overseer of Queen Teti Sheri's palace, whose name was Jehuti-Mez. Queen Hatshepsut seems to have even more tombs, aces up her sleeve. These tombs were carved into the rock instead of being built as pyramids, showing a unique ancient perspective on how to protect the soul in the afterlife. Experts managed to retrieve some cool ancient pieces from the site. Toys made of clay, mummy masks, winged scarabs, and some amulets. Sadly, there surely used to be way more artifacts, but over the last centuries, there have been people other than archaeologists to stumble upon this site. It's likely that looters got to these tombs before them and may have taken some valuable items. But they did leave behind some cool stuff for the researchers, like pottery used for offerings of bread and meat, along with archers' bows that connect the tomb's owners to the Egyptian military. Meanwhile, soul protection is way more important than you might think, especially if you're roaming around Luxor looking for ancient secrets. You aren't scared of King Tut's curse, are you? Let me tell you what happened to those who weren't scared, but promise me to take it with a dash of salt, okay? For years, Egyptologists, especially those who believed in paranormal activity, were convinced that there was an unsettling curse surrounding Tutankhamun's archaeological discoveries. This belief stemmed from the mysterious and untimely demise of several excavators who discovered the tomb in 1922 with no logical explanation for why they passed away. It was just easier to chalk it up to something supernatural and avoid the whole mess. But it turns out it wasn't a curse at all. It was likely the radiation that caused those excavators to perish. Now, you might wonder where the radiation came from. After all, while radioactivity was discovered in the 19th century, ancient Egyptians, despite their impressive pyramids, didn't have any radium lying around to make Tut's tomb glow like crazy. So, what could be the real story? It might have been toxic waste behind it all. Toxic levels of radiation from uranium and hazardous waste have been lurking inside the tomb since it was sealed over 3,000 years ago. The burial chamber of Tutankhamun's tomb reportedly has such high radiation levels that anyone who steps inside could easily end up with a fatal dose of radiation sickness or an incurable condition. By the way, you can have a somewhat similar level of radioactivity if you don't get rid of those moldy dinner leftovers you left to perish in your fridge a month ago. But this radioactivity isn't exclusive to Tutankhamun's tomb. Ancient Egyptian artifacts discovery is rewarding yet dangerous due to unusually high radiation levels in Old Kingdom tombs all over Egypt. Geiger counters have detected radiation at 2 sites near the Giza pyramids, and radon, a radioactive gas, has been found in several underground tombs in Saqqara. Interestingly, experts believe that the builders of these ancient tombs were aware of the toxins, as some eerie warnings were carved into the walls of many tombs. One inscription ominously declared, "They that break this tomb shall meet their end by a malady that no doctor can diagnose." Other ominous phrases like "forbidden," "due to evil spirits," only added to the fear that supernatural curses haunted these ancient sites. Ominous signs have stunned archaeologists since forever, but the fear grew even stronger a century ago with the mysterious passing of Lord Carnarvon, who funded King Tut's excavation in 1922 and reportedly explored the treasure-filled rooms, along with several others who entered the tomb. Arthur Weigall, another British Egyptologist who was present at the tomb's opening and is credited with starting the curse myth, passed away young when he was just in his 50s in 1934. Chances are the condition that made him pass was connected to radiation. In total, 6 out of the 26 people who were there when the tomb was opened met their end within a decade from various causes. Not only X-ray exposure, those reasons include asphyxia, stroke, heart failure, pneumonia, and even poisoning. Well, isn't this getting a little grim? There was one guy who opened the tomb and somehow managed to avoid the infamous curse, Howard Carter, or so it seemed. Some folks pointed to his survival as proof that the curse wasn't real. After digging up the tomb, Carter published several books on the topic, and shifted gears from archaeology to dealing in antiquities for various museums. Despite dodging demise or injury, rumors swirled about how the curse may have impacted him in other ways. One of the big stories linked him to Lord Carnarvon's daughter, Evelyn. Some said he was madly in love with her, but she married someone else, so he chose to stay single. Others claimed they had an affair while she was in Egypt, which ended when her father passed away and she left the country for good. However, there wasn't much evidence to support these stories. Evelyn was just 6 when they met, and they remained friends until his last breath. She was even one of the few attendees at his funeral, but denied any romantic involvement, saying they weren't that close. A year after the revolutionary discovery near King Tut's tomb, Evelyn married politician Sir Brograve Beauchamp and had a daughter. That same year, Beauchamp toured the tomb with his parents, guided by Carter himself. Carter never married and, aside from those posthumous rumors about Evelyn, had no other romantic connections. While the curse adds an intriguing twist to his life story, his tendency to keep relationships at arm's length was evident long before the tomb was opened. It seemed Carter just wasn't a people person. In 1939, after battling a serious illness, he ultimately succumbed to fate. He was 64, which was a pretty common life expectancy in the UK back then, so no one really thought it was off and linked it to an ancient curse. When he passed, it turned out he had several artifacts from Tutankhamun's tomb in his London apartment, which were eventually sent back to Egypt, marking what some viewed as the curse's end. Who knows? Maybe if he hadn't had all those ancient souvenirs at his place, he would have lived way longer. But all the other demises might seem off. The curse theory was likely fueled by some strange events during the excavation. Carnarvon got a mosquito bite that became severely infected, and around the time they opened the tomb, Cairo experienced a bizarre power outage in a freak sandstorm. Back in England, the Earl's dog, Susie, managed to escape from Carnarvon's house and began barking frantically at seemingly nothing. At least that's what the staff and family saw. Strangely enough, at the very moment her owner's heart stopped, Susie started howling and fell down without showing any signs of life. Maybe radiation didn't play a crucial role after all, and those were indeed ancient artifacts from King Tut's tomb that made them all perish. Spooky, huh?
Strange and amazing items are discovered often, but figuring out what our ancestors were up to is pretty tough. Especially when all you have are just some rusty cups and cave drawings. It's no surprise that even the experts in lab coats sometimes make mistakes. But it's not just about dusty plates and huge stones. Sometimes there's even humans with large heads. So grab your digging tools and let's travel back to ancient times to explore incredible societies that even scientists can't fully explain. Sardinia may look idyllic now, but I'm not gonna lie, I wouldn't fancy visiting it 3,000 years ago. Rumor has it, terrible giants roamed around this island back then. People even talk about finding human skeletons over 13 feet tall there, although nobody's ever shown anything to prove it. But the stories will make you wonder because some weird stuff has definitely happened. In 1974, over 5,000 pieces of broken stone artifacts were found in a part of the island called Monte Prama, but instead of being displayed in a museum, they were locked up in an underground vault for about 30 years. Sounds a bit suspicious, doesn't it? When they were finally displaced in 2005, scientists put the pieces together to find statues of 38 giant men standing 8 feet tall. Not quite as tall as the legendary skeletons, but still pretty huge. It's thought these statues were made by the Nuragic people, who lived on the island a long time ago. Besides giant statues, they also built over 8,000 massive stone buildings. Perhaps Nuragic weren't giants themselves, but they definitely liked their things big. I do too. I like a big number of likes on our videos, that'd be pretty great. Thank you if you liked this and subscribed. Now back to the video. You and I are pretty smart, but we might not be the smartest humans ever. Actually, we might not even be the smartest species. Since 1913, some skull fossils found in South Africa have hinted at a possibly smarter contender, called Boscop Man. This human-like species might have lived as recently as 10,000 years ago. Their skull suggests they had really big heads, which means their brains could have been 30% bigger than ours. Wow! Their average IQ could have been around 149, making them among the smartest 0.05% of people today. But if a Boscop brainiac was so much smarter, why are they not around and we are? Well, bigger isn't always better, you know. Our brains are a lot bigger than our ape relatives, mainly in the prefrontal cortex. This part helps with high-level tasks like making decisions, remembering things short-term, and being aware of ourselves. The parts of the brain that handle our senses and movements haven't really grown much. So, maybe the Boscops spent too much time dwelling on the past rather than doing practical things like hunting. But this is all just guessing. We really don't know what happened to these clever cousins of ours. Some people even argue that Boscops weren't any different from us, with the only evidence being parts of skulls. The jungle is huge. Did you know the Amazon rainforest is home to about 30% of all the world's plant and animal species? That's impressive. However, the history of one native species, humans, has long puzzled scientists. The mysterious Kasarabe people lived here for hundreds of years and then vanished around 1400 AD. People thought the Amazon only had a few scattered tribes, but recently we discovered big, unusual shapes in the ground called geoglyphs. These might look like simple shallow ditches, but they're actually the remains of a vast civilization that spread over 5,000 square miles and includes about 450 markings, some as wide as 1,300 feet. That's insane! They likely contained ceremonial buildings and could have hosted up to 1 million people as recently as 550 years ago. Thanks to new technology like LiDAR, which uses a safe laser to map the forest without harming it, we can explore deeper. In 2019, some scans showed miles of raised roads and pathways and even pyramids over 70 feet tall. They found 26 separate settlements, 2 of which were at least 250 acres each. Damn, that's like 330 soccer fields. It's not certain what happened to the Kasarabe people. Maybe European conquistadors drove them out. Maybe the most baffling ancient civilization is one we've never actually found a trace of. Yep, I'm talking about Atlantis, the grand city that supposedly sank into the ocean. The first mentions of Atlantis come from the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, who talked about a great city near the Strait of Gibraltar. But for ages, everyone just thought Plato made up Atlantis as a perfect version of his own Athens. So why, about 12,000 years after it supposedly vanished, do we still wonder if it might be real? Well, in the 19th century, U.S. Congressman Ignatius Donnelly wrote a book giving 13 reasons why he thought Atlantis was more than just a myth. Then, in 1965, some folks thought they actually found Atlantis when they discovered the Richat structure, a massive 25-mile-wide dome in Mauritania, Africa. It's so big that you can see the whole thing from space. 2 astronauts flying over the Sahara Desert spotted this giant eye staring back at them and thought they'd made the discovery of a lifetime. Unfortunately, there's no solid evidence linking this structure to Atlantis. It's believed to have formed from volcanic activity about 100 million years ago. But it does look suspicious, doesn't it? Still, we're no closer to knowing the truth. Imagine going back to about 3,300 BCE and finding yourself in South Asia. Welcome to the Harappan civilization. These people were way ahead of their time. They had cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, complete with baked brick houses, sophisticated drainage systems, and even public baths. This place might have had over 5 million people, making it one of the densest regions at the time. They also invented a system of standardized weights that was incredibly useful for traders. And trading they did. These people had connections stretching all the way to the Middle East, thanks to their great skills in metallurgy. They even had a form of ancient branding. The seals were used to stamp clay on trade goods. Despite being so advanced with a thriving urban life, there's a whole bunch of mystery shrouding their language and script. We've got bits and pieces of their writing, but no one's deciphered them yet, even with all the technology we have today. We also still don't know how exactly their society worked. It looks like they didn't flaunt their social status as much as other civilizations. No grand palaces or massive monuments. Instead, their largest buildings might have been granaries. They sure were practical. Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. Around 1800 BCE, this bustling civilization started to decline, possibly due to shifts in river patterns. As the environment changed, the Harappans packed up, moving towards more hospitable lands. Ever heard of the Minotaur? The beast with a bull's head and a man's body, hunting the bravest travelers in a massive maze. Well, this wasn't just any old tale. It was one of the most popular dramas of the ancient world, and it was inspired by this place, the island of Crete. The Minoans lived here during the Bronze Age. They had stunning palaces, amazing frescoes, and a culture so rich it still fascinates historians to this day. They built places like Knossos, which was so complex with its multi-story buildings and elaborate hallways that it might have inspired the whole labyrinth myth. Their engineering was so ahead of its time that even their drainage systems were more advanced than what many of us have today. Let me know in the comments which of these stories you find the most fascinating, and thanks for watching.
Have you heard of Gobekletepe? It's an ancient site in Turkey that literally made historians rewrite history books. Over 11,000 years ago, a group of prehistoric humans crafted an enigmatic masterpiece that's even older than Stonehenge. Before its discovery, archaeologists believed that people didn't know about iron and weren't good at making pottery. They were sure that settled life only emerged with the need for agriculture. But Gobekletepe changed this belief. The place has revealed that it was the temple that paved the way for a settled life, not agriculture. Until this discovery, researchers believed that farming was the catalyst for sedentary living. Meet Professor Schmidt, the guy whose findings changed this theory. He managed to prove that hunter-gatherer communities laid the very foundations of this way of life. Back in the 1960s, other archaeologists visited the area, but they totally missed the mark. While surveying the region, they stumbled upon a hill with scattered limestone slabs and concluded it was just an old burial ground from medieval times. Little did they know that there was so much more to uncover. In 1994, Schmidt embarked on his own survey of prehistoric sites in the area. Surprise! He instantly realized he had discovered something truly extraordinary. Unlike the nearby flat and barren plateaus, Gobekletepe had a gently rounded top, rising 50 feet above the surrounding landscape. Funny enough, the translation of this place's name is Potbelly Hill. Schmidt was sure only humans could have made something like this. Those broken limestone pieces that were mistaken for gravestones turned out to be way more exciting. It was like stumbling upon a hidden treasure. The pieces took on a whole new meaning, and Schmidt with his team was about to dive into the secrets waiting beneath the surface. To their surprise, they found no traces of a settlement, no hearths for cooking, no houses, and none of those adorable clay figurines commonly found in nearby sites of similar age. However, they uncovered that those ancient people used tools like stone hammers. So, Schmidt and his team put their heads together and took a wild guess at the age of Gobekletepe's stone structures. Their estimation got backed up by some limited carbon dating done right at the site. The ancient vibes of this place were finally starting to make sense. It was like a puzzle slowly coming together. You may think that back then, people didn't have special tools to create something as cool as Gobekletepe. Not true. Turns out, these prehistoric folks used flint tools instead of fancy metal chisels. They were also skilled at chipping away softer limestone and crafting pillars right on the spot. Afterward, They carried the pillars a short distance to the summit and placed them upright. Once the stone rings were complete, they covered them with layers of dirt. Over time, they added new rings, and voila, you've got a cool hill to impress people in the future. During their first year of excavation, the team went through 15,000 pieces of animal bones from wild creatures. These people didn't have pet animals or grow their own food. They hunted wild animals for their meals. But things were about to change, because the place had everything they needed to start farming. Scientists say they had wild sheep and wild grains that could be domesticated. And guess what? Just 20 miles away, geneticists found evidence of the world's oldest domesticated strains of wheat at a prehistoric village. These amazing findings have completely changed how we view civilization. In the past, experts believed that people needed to learn how to farm and settle in one place before they could build temples and develop complex societies. But guess what? Schmidt's research flips that idea on its head. He claims that the incredible effort put into constructing these astonishing structures actually set the stage for the development of advanced societies. It means that societal and cultural changes happened before agriculture. Schmidt has this fascinating hypothesis about Gobekletepe. He thinks it could have been a special burial site where people left their loved ones. And here's the twist. The burial site was adorned with fancy statues and symbols representing deities from the spiritual realm. The idea that Gobekletepe could have served as a sacred place adds another layer of complexity to the whole story. While the site's true purpose may remain elusive, Schmidt's insights invite us to consider the profound interplay between life and the afterlife, and the deep reverence ancient hunter-gatherer societies may have had for their departed ancestors. Now let's talk about the stars of the show, the mesmerizing T-shaped columns that dominate Gobekletepe. These mysterious structures range from 10 to 20 feet tall and most likely represent stylized human figures. But one figure stands out from the rest, the three-dimensional lion relief. This depiction really fires up our imagination. Why? Because it hints at the possibility that lions roamed Anatolia during the Neolithic period. These standing stones are arranged in circles and placed in rectangular pits. Each circle has a similar setup. Two big T-shaped pillars in the center, surrounded by slightly smaller ones facing inward. Talk about a stylish arrangement. These towering pillars reach a whopping 16 feet and weigh between 7 and 10 tons. Some pillars are plain and simple, while others are like works of art with intricate carvings. Foxes, scorpions, and vultures come to life, crawling and twisting on the pillars' sides. But it's not just animals depicted on these stones. Some pillars have abstract shapes representing humans, and even small carvings of clothing items. Some of them even have belts. Now, there's one pillar that stands out from the rest like a rock star. This super old stone pillar suggests that a comet crashed into Earth. It happened during a chilly period that lasted about 1,000 years. Previous studies examining Greenland ice cores hinted at this comet theory, but now the carvings at Gobekletepe prove it right. The carvings on the pillars are like a historical comic strip. They even show a headless human figure. Researchers fed the images into a computer and discovered their connections to constellations, indicating that this temple might have been an ancient observatory. It's like our ancestors were trying to document this cataclysmic event in their own unique way. Archaeologists have been excavating and researching Gobekletepe since the mid-1990s, peeling back layers of history and providing us with a deeper understanding of the intricate relationship between various elements. They have no plans to stop the whole process for another 150 years. Who knows what else they'll find? You see, Gobekletepe has been labeled purely as a ritual site with no signs of domestic activities. We were led to believe that the absence of water meant it couldn't support semi-sedentary communities. But scientists believe it's time to shake things up and approach Gobekletepe with fresh eyes. It's time to question what we believed before and use new evidence and different ways of thinking. Like, there might have been a group of people living in the area who didn't stay in one place all the time. They moved around a bit but still had their own civilization, living in the area semi-sedentarily. Gobekletepe is not just home to a single temple, but an astounding collection of over 20 ancient structures. As archaeologists delve into the depths of this wonder, they are unraveling its unique layout, featuring two prominent focal points at the heart of each establishment, complemented by smaller structures and dividing walls. What's even crazier is that in this area, there are over 200 obelisks, which are narrow tapering monuments.